Howdy. So let's chat about the Legends and Lattes adjacent cozy fantasy book, Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. So before we talk about anything else, the title, Can't Spell Treason, T-R-E. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. I can see how if you just say it, it works as a pun, but usually with a book, you gotta spell that out and put it on the cover, and it I might could tolerate it if not for the fact that in this book, with the book tea shop store they open, they never drink tea. There's not a single tea leaf in that entire book. It is all herbal teas, which is a misnomer. Technically, if you have an herbal tea, that's called a tisane. So you you need the word tisane to spell treason just as much as you do tea, but that's all very frustrating to me. But moving on, because I have a lot of thoughts. Um, I'll say she did very openly admit that this book was heavily inspired by Legends and Lattes, and I do appreciate that. I also think that the gap between when that book was published and she probably read it and when this book came out might explain a lot of, or at least some of the issues. Because I'll go ahead and tell y'all, I was very excited to read this book. I adored Legends and Lattes, and I want to see more of this kind of newish genre. But I am putting it at about like a 1.5. I mentally DNF'd this one around 60 to 75%. I was starting to think about it at 50%. I went ahead and and when I say skimmed, I mean like I read about 5 words off each page. I wanted a vague idea of what happened at the end, so I could go ahead and say all of this without feeling like maybe I was wrong and something redeeming happened in the last couple chapters. But it didn't. But at least I'm confident in that now, I guess. But let's get the context. The premise of this book is that Reyna, this woman who's been trained up and worked in like the Queen's royal guard or whatever since birth, has a secret relationship with this very important wizard girl called the Arkandor. And one day, they had talked about just running away and kind of leaving the places they both work in. And one day, something happens, and Reyna's like, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. And they do, and that makes Reyna like an exile because and this is one thing that I did think was pretty interesting about the world building in the book. She works in this palace of a queendom. Their society is very matriarchal. It's also an extremely tyrannical government, and it's made very clear in the book that the queendom is like the very backwards, regressive, kind of repressful? Is that a word? You know, that part of this world. Repressive. I meant repressive. So I did think it was kind of a different, like, neat idea to see. It's so different in terms of women's rights, but then the others are all way behind. So she runs off to this extremely out of the way town, kind of in the borders between the queendom and the country, the Arkandor, whose name, by the way, is Kianth. I guess that's how it's pronounced. And they, really similar to Legends and Lattes, find an abandoned building and open up a shop in it. So the parallels to Legends and Lattes are pretty clear. Obviously, in that one, the couple was not established at the outset. I don't want to give any spoilers. In this one, they've been together for quite a while time, but now they can finally actually be together, which is sort of different, I guess. And one of them is a woman who's leaving a life of violence and very physically punishing work that she doesn't believe in behind. And then you have a more magical person in the equation, too. or I guess I should say a magical element. And there's also like ley lines get worked into it. And all, that's probably a pretty generic thing, but sets up beverage purveying business in a new town. There's like a found family element. There's a lot of parallels. So one thing I wasn't as crazy about from the outset is in Legends and Lattes, there's a lot of emphasis done on just the slow and rewarding work of building this coffee shop up. And in this one, Keith just kind of uses magic to do most of it in like an afternoon. And in all fairness, it makes her extremely tired, like magic drain tired, I guess. But it wasn't the same. There's much less emphasis and detail on the actual business, like coziness part of this, which is strange because the book is over twice as long and it crams a bunch of side plots that I don't think we really need in there. This was a pretty common complaint when I was looking through other Goodreads reviews, is it's like, this book is so long, there's so much going on, but I was painfully bored by the halfway point, and I concur. There is way more focus in this book on the like romance relationship aspect of it, which I've said before. If it's done well, I like a dash of that. I typically check out when it's what so much of the narrative focuses on, but especially when it's done the way this was. It is so repetitive. Like every 3 pages, it's like, I love you so much, and I'm so angry that you put yourself in harm's way because you love me too much, and you should take better care of yourself, and you're stupid and stubborn, and I love you so much. And it doesn't help that Kianth and Reyna kind of sound like the same person to me. I would forget when their perspective switched because it is like every other chapter kind of alternates the POV. So it just feels like that conversation is on a loop the entire book, and I think the whole I love you, but why are you so stupid? Like, about, obviously they don't actually mean that their partner is intellectually challenged, but that they're prioritizing the wrong thing. They're not prioritizing their own well-being enough. I think that's so corny and overdone, especially when it's repeated that often. That was another thing I saw emphasized in a lot of reviews, is that this book is very big on like telling instead of showing. And I definitely got that with the whole how absolutely perfect they're supposed to be for each other and how wonderful their relationship is thing. But what's I will take that telling over the showing she did do with the absurd amount of PDA in this book. And I mean like PDA in the business they run with minors present. I hated that. That gives me the ick. I don't like it in a book about straight people or any other configuration. It was at least, I mean, because you remember, PDA does stand for public display of affection. It was just very corny and inappropriate and bleh. Like I said, I don't care what gender couple you're looking at, but I don't like that. It's just secondhand embarrassment when you're reading. So, I think their relationship was very much the look how perfect they are, even though you can't really see how perfect they are together outside the excessive PDA. That lack of chemistry was also seen pretty comically in a couple that it's very clear will get together at some point in the series, because it is a series. There's a pirate themed book after this one. I don't know if it's out yet or not. If this sounds like a spoiler to you, I'll give you a thumbs up when I'm done talking about it that you can skip to. But there are two feuding lords over this kind of controversially governed region of both countries, I suppose. Uh, Lord Wylan and Diarn Feo? I don't know how that was supposed to be said. Keith and Reyna joke like constantly about how much they flirt and how into each other they are in spite of ostensibly hating each other. I didn't see it. I really just thought they hated each other. I nothing about their interactions said interested in each other to me. Okay, that part is over, but speaking of Diarn Feo, they are a non binary character. They're not the only one. But what I. And, like, their representation's good, but what is. What is questionable to me is that you are told that in this universe, the wizards basically have pronoun pins. And I don't know if it's the fact that it just feels so copy and pasted, like this very contemporary thing from our world into this high fantasy setting. I just thought that was kind of jarring and lame, even if the intentions were good. I mean, like, wizard pronoun pins. In spite of the fact that it's explained that in this part of that world, like, gender neutral pronouns are a very accepted norm. It's not controversial like it tends to be in our world. I just thought if you wanted to incorporate an element like that, there's much more subtle and creative directions you could have gone with it. Like maybe the kind of hat you wear or something. I don't know. But it was also strange that it was like I think just this one character that had the pin. And like I've seen some fiction books do some really interesting things in that realm. Like there was one. I'll just paste it in here because I can't think of the name right now. And I didn't love this book. It had issues as a science fiction book, although it was really, really good in other aspects. Like, you had this spaceship where, regardless of your biological features, if you were born on, like, this wing, you were raised as a boy. If you were raised on this wing, you were raised androgynous. And I just thought that was a pretty interesting take. It made you think. Wizard pronoun pins don't make me think, they just kind of make me go, okay. Jumping to another point now, it really bothers me that they're mean to Reyna's horse for no reason, like the entire book. Her name's Lilac. She's apparently just terrible at being a horse. Canth in particular is really nasty to her. I I mean, literally, she's basically like, your horse sucks. She's a bad horse. You should get a griffin. What is cozy about, like, crap talking a horse? I don't. Out of the entire book, this is probably the choice I understand the least. But yeah, regarding Canth, she was definitely my less favorite of the two. I mean, I said part of my issue with the book is that they kind of sound like the same person a lot, but Canth was definitely the one that irritated me more. And this was part of that. She just thinks she's being, like, I don't know, a sassy boss babe a lot, when really she's just being, like, mean and off putting. Anyway, jumping topics again, and I think I've hinted at this. Is it like, with the magic cleaning of the shop and all of that? A lot of their problems are just way too easily resolved, I guess, so you can immediately jump to the next one and cram another conflict into this book. But it was, I don't know, like they told a bunch of lies that were just extremely bad and dumb and that I don't think anyone would fall for. And it works with like almost no issue. Okay, I guess I didn't record this. I don't think she's a bad writer. I just think this was probably plunked out very quickly. Maybe in time to try and beat others to the genre that's picking up. Yeah, I think she plunked a lot of it out very quickly and it wasn't edited very much. I think, if she let it kind of marinate for a while and came back to it, given it off to an editor, maybe would have gotten chopped down to like 150 pages, like Legends and Lattes was. And a bunch of the redundant conversations and unnecessary side plots probably would have been culled. Frankly, even under the best of circumstances, I think it would be difficult to write a Legends and Lattes style cozy fantasy book that could keep readers engaged for much longer than that. This brings me to another question, which is why don't y'all write cozy fantasy mysteries? Not like, I mean, this had maybe a mystery element, but I mean like whodunits. I will read it. Like, immediately, at least if you're the first one. You've probably kind of got a built-in audience just from, I'm sure, cozy fantasy readers who are going to want something a little bit different, but also from paranormal cozy mystery readers, because that is an entire sub genre of its own. I've only read one, maybe two, depending on how you define it. I think they're okay, but some people, that's the only kind of cozy mystery they really read. And I think they would jump at the chance to read something the same, but, a high fantasy setting, because all the paranormal cozies I'm aware of are realistic fiction, fantasy. I forget the term. But also, like, with the Knives Out films and everything, I think just cultural interest in the whodunit is kind of on the rise again. Fingers crossed. So I think a lot of the fantasy readers you're pulling in would enjoy that as well. Right. These are just truly random nitpicks. I thought most of the names were fairly creative, except Matilde. Matilde. I called her Matilda in my head every time. Every time. For something banking on the cozy aesthetic, I could have gone for a lot more food descriptions. The main one that comes to mind is when they literally were just like, hey, we have bagels and cream cheese. It's something a cook in the Queendom Palace invented. And I do mean they just said bagels and cream cheese. Also, there's no cat and surprisingly little discussion with patrons of their store about books. There really should be a cat or a dog, but like something. I guess you could call these positive nitpicks, but I thought the cover was nice because I think there were elements of her world building that were pretty interesting. There were puns. I appreciated the puns. I actually kind of liked that it was made clear this was set in a very small rural town as opposed to kind of a larger city in Legends. And again, I thought the book started off really strong. There were moments I really enjoyed it. It was just at some point in the book I really quit caring what happened to anyone. And I only finished it so I could be assured of my opinions more or less. Especially since this book apparently got a lot of hype on Book Talk. God, I haven't been there in a while, but that fits. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say about it. The next one I'm gonna try and read is Cursed Cocktails by S.L. Rowland. Or literally here or somewhere. That looks like it might be cozy fantasy, but a bit different, which I could go for at this point. I don't know when I'll get to that. There's kind of, I think maybe a science fiction cozy mystery called The Midsolar Murders. I just checked that out of the library, but I hadn't looked at it at all yet. It looks promising though. I do not know if I'm gonna read the pirate sequel to this book. Probably not, but curiosity might get the best of me. I've also got to carve out time for a blossoming Nancy Drew game addiction. So, playing Danger on Deception Island right now, and it is very old, but I'm enjoying it. So anyway, take care, stay cozy, happy reading. Bye.